Good afternoon. I'm Professor Roger Lewis Martinez-Dávila from the University of Colorado, and it's a pleasure to meet you today and join you at the DarkArchives 2020 conference. As we can see, we're not here today, all in one place and able to enjoy each other's company, but I'm glad that Dr. Pink and each of our colleagues has agreed to participate in this electronic forum so that we can continue this exciting kind of endeavor of investigating how we can more bring archives and documents back together and into scholarly distribution. My paper today is called Medieval Spanish Manuscripts, Modern Digital Repositories, the Future of Scholarly-Curated Thematic Collections Supported via Public Engagement. And I'm a specialist in medieval Spain, particularly cathedral and municipal archives, and there are manuscripts from roughly around the 1100s through about 1600. First, I'd like to acknowledge that my research, which is a part of the Deciphering Secrets project, is funded by Marie Curie Actions, the Universidad Carlos III de Madrid, the European Commission, and several other institutions in Spain, as well as the University of Colorado. So the key element of my work involves assembling different pieces together. First, massive open online courses with manuscripts, providing for some additional connectivity, which grants access. In this paper, we present how we approach digital preservation, distribution, indexing, and searchability of manuscript transcription collections. We argue that building collaborative partnerships with cathedrals in Spain, employing free massive online courses or MOOCs to attract and engage interested learners, and maximizing the connectivity of minor research university libraries and digital repositories like my own in Colorado might serve as a replicable and organic model used by modest research initiatives. So what's the problem that we're really dealing with? Well, in terms of Spanish manuscripts, it really is about accessibility. The medieval cathedral archives of Spain, especially those in the Royal Castilian city of Burgos, remain dark archives to all but a few academicians who know the hidden doors that guard access to almost a millennium of interreligious history. Deciphering and distributing this history of the collaborative nature of Jewish, Christian, and Muslim communities is a significant problem. Why? Physical access to manuscripts is limited. Manuscripts are not digital, indexing is not attuned to interreligious themes, and epigraphic challenges limit access to the content of documents. So one resolution to this is our approach at the Deciphering Secrets project, which is a collaboration of scholars and the public that crowdsources the collection and transcription of medieval manuscripts. And in this way, we've kind of breached these defiant walls of the church. We couple citizen science, specifically teaching everyday persons the craft of paleography and engaging them in the transcription of these manuscripts in the 13th and 15th centuries in particular. And we're now opening new lines of digital humanities research investigation. So the Deciphering Secrets project is really about bringing the scholars and the public together and to study this period of coexistence between 500 and about 1500 on the Iberian Peninsula. As you remember, Jews first arrived during the Carthaginian era, or potentially even during the Phoenician era, into Iberia, and then by 711 Muslims had invaded and settled in medieval Iberia. So this is this period of significant interaction. So the project is really about reclaiming humanity's deep-seated cultural curiosity. It's about mobilizing technology to energize students to learn and to contribute to research, and to focus on a kind of a collaborative education and research model. We do this primarily through the use of massive open online courses. And these are some of the courses that I'm offering presently on Coursera through the University of Colorado. Previously, I did this through the Universidad Carlos III de Madrid and edX. In particular, the two MOOCs on Toledo and Burgos focus on transcription. And overall, over the last 5 to 6 years, there have been about roughly, let's say 30,000 students who have participated in these courses in some aspect, and a much smaller number as transcribers. So let's take a look at what these MOOCs kind of look like. The three Abrahamic faiths, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, once shared the Iberian Peninsula for 800 years. Why does this time and place, medieval Iberia, so profoundly intrigue us, confound us? Do we see ourselves today struggling with the same issues of religious intolerance and cultural purity, a pervasive need to separate us from them? Deciphering Secrets delves into pressing issues of medieval coexistence. It also teaches you how to read medieval manuscripts so that we can make new scholarly discoveries. We explore the medieval cities of Burgos, Toledo, and Granada, the impact of plague, civil war, and religious conversion, the wonder of the revival of Greek knowledge via Muslim intermediaries. We witness the implementation of the Inquisition and discriminatory blood purity laws, and the completion of the Reconquista and the expulsion of Jews and Muslims. We ask, how did Jews, Christians, and Muslims, and recent converts to Christianity adapt to their changing world in the late medieval world? You will learn to transcribe medieval handwriting, and together we will decipher new secrets. It's always embarrassing to watch yourself on screen like that. So thank you for indulging me. And two, also just to mention, I apologize. The volume may have been a little bit loud there, so I'm sorry I wasn't able to adjust it. So you can see how we can use these MOOCs to kind of really kind of excite people to get involved, to say, hey, I am interested in these affairs, and I just don't want to be necessarily a tourist. I'm not ready to go back and work on my doctorate, but I'd like to give a hand maybe. And so what we found out is that we can democratize paleographic expertise. With as little as 2 weeks of web-based instruction, digital videos, exercises and examinations, and online discussion forums, our peer-reviewed research demonstrates our quote-unquote citizen scholars can master transcribing medieval handwriting. Specifically, a little quote from our article that we cite down here that we publish. For 48 students, we performed an expert evaluation or review of individual transcription blocks from cathedral manuscripts. And these are roughly from the late 1300s, early 1400s. And we found out our transcriptions actually revealed only an error rate of 12%. Or another way of saying that, students correctly identified almost 90%, 87% of all the letters, numbers, and abbreviations from 15th century manuscripts. So it shows you that the public can be engaged and can be energized to kind of work alongside of scholars. And this is not necessarily something that's limited to what we can do individually in our own offices or with our own graduate students or more advanced graduate undergraduates. Here is just a quick sample of what one of the manuscripts looks like, because I know this is a conference about manuscripts, so we're all like super engaged with the page and with the document and with the hand. So you can see this kind of these different elements of text on the screen, and this one is particularly as a document from the Cathedral Burgos from a collection of registers. So that gives you a sense of what is in them. So the next step, and where I'm building on from last year when I presented at the conference, was talking about scholarly-curated thematic collections. So what we kind of envision is one possible for archives, which are scholarly-curated collections that bring many different institutions' collections together into communion with one another. These novel archives can ensure universal access, preservation, and dissemination of digital manuscripts alongside of robust indexing and crowdsourced transcriptions. This goal is embodied in the Deciphering Secrets manuscript collection, which we're now starting to catalog and host at our university archive. So this is quite of a different kind of approach than in the past, where we think about, oh, I go to an institution to study this area, this region, or these personalities are from that area. Instead, we're starting to say, if you're interested in interreligious life in medieval Spain, well, we're assembling a collection of our documents from the Middle Ages, and those typically must come from cathedral municipal archives. So what does our collection look like? It's a collection of cathedral and municipal archives and their documents. It's a collection of about 10,000 images and manuscripts from the cities of Burgos, Toledo, Granada, and Plasencia, Spain. And each image sometimes will be at least one folio, sometimes two folios. Each image is one that I personally photographed or worked with archive staff to photograph, and those documents relate to my own kind of investigations, doing a preliminary analysis to identify whether a Jewish, Muslim, or Christian interaction was occurring. And mostly what they involve is like transactional records of daily life, property leases, sales of goods and services, legal agreements in these communities. So in that way, we really can kind of get past really these kind of chronicle type documents or documents that really specify, meta kind of elements of a religious life. What we can really kind of see is when you are in a cathedral in Spain in the Middle Ages and you need to have some work done to a chapel and it requires a carpenter, almost universally what we see is the cathedral canons say it's time to hire a carpenter, and they should be Muslim because of their expertise. And more often they will say, and be sure to hire, this specific individual who's well known. So that's the type of detail that we can examine. So what are the problems with cathedral manuscripts and municipal manuscripts? Well, the problem is most of them are not digitized. Some municipalities have had some robust efforts to create digital records, but in Spain, typically what we see is municipal archives, really their collections do not begin, at least in the Castilian region of Spain as opposed to the Aragonese section of Spain, until roughly about the 1400s, 1500s, but nothing really earlier. So you really do have to turn to the cathedral archives. Also, locally available indexing is inadequate, really. We find that the locally available finding aids are not attuned to interreligious themes, and that's because what were these institutions primarily saving documents for? Well, in the case of the church, it's about protecting privileges that they may have been granted from the papacy, or confirming, basically property transactions that relate to, the collection of income for the diocese. The other piece is, so you'll see references on occasion to Jews and Muslims, but it's not in the interest of the indexer. And so in that case, really what these collections need to be done, what needs to happen with them, which might never happen, is a re-indexing effort, which is to say, we want to look at these specific areas. So that's what my effort has been about, is to kind of look at these important cities in the Middle Ages in Spain and evaluate their collections during the 1300s and 1400s and locating kind of previously unindexed materials. The last thing that we know that they don't have almost universally is any type of web-based Dublin core standards that allow us to track metadata. So this is pretty significant because really without that metadata and indexing, really the documents in essence are dark. We can't get to them because we don't know they exist. So this is a very typical finding aid that you would find in a cathedral. This one is a typewritten finding aid that was probably typed around the early 1900s, and this is for the Cathedral of Plasencia and its archive. And it's no longer than about 125 pages, so there's nothing digital about it, and this aid is only available locally in the archive. Sometimes you do also have access to looking at web-based tools, but let me show you what they look like real quick. So behind the scenes here, you can see this web search. So typically what we find in Spain is banking foundations are particularly generous with the church in terms of helping them to preserve documents. In the case of the Cathedral of Burgos, there's been a probably, over 10-year effort where this foundation of the Caja Circulo, which is a banking foundation, has helped fund the indexing of their records. And they've created this online database, which is incomplete online. There are more robust ones that are kept in the cathedral archive. So this is kind of our early view of it. But if we see here, if we do a search for Judío, which is the word for Jew, and then looked from the periods of 1300 to 1450, roughly the periods that I'm looking at, we do a search. It's not bad. It's actually great. We always want to commend our archivists for everything that they do. But the most interesting thing is that we find that only 86 records pertain to any Jewish life for that 150-year period. And from my experience of looking at these cathedral documents, that is a vast underestimate of what is there. So it's an issue of indexing. And you can, dig down in these and you can see that the type of data that's recorded there, again, it will show you the reference. So it's volume 17 and folio 433, and provide you with a little bit of an abstract, but it's pretty insufficient for the purposes of a researcher that is going to do any amount of research on a religious theme without going to the site. Moreover, this is just a search engine. There are no documents available online. So let's return to our examination here. So what are the solutions we might have? Well, basically, what we're doing in terms of at the University of Colorado is creating a format for kind of processing these this new kind of collection and getting it ready and available to the broader public. So we use a basic Google form to create Dublin core metadata for our collection. Nothing too special there. With a focus on creating document abstracts and keywords that tie back to interreligious themes. Next, we kind of ingest the data, the metadata, as well as archivable PDF-A, so Adobe PDFs, but these are a stable format into our digital repository with the assistance of Mary Rupp, our archivist at the University of Colorado. And then this process is continuously supported via just an individual graduate intern in any given year, and or our university and MOOC courses. So typically I might teach about 35 students in any given semester, and I typically try to incorporate my students into the research as well as the materials that I'm pulling from MOOCs. So let's take a quick tour of what we're creating, just so you could see, just get a flavor of it. So behind the scenes, this is the database that we've created. So you can see this is at the University of Colorado, Colorado Springs, which is part of the Mountain Scholar. So this is Colorado, we're about mountains. So the Mountain Scholar is a collaboration of archives in our region. And then this bumps up one more level to the Digital Public Library of America. So eventually our collections will be accessible via that way. And we make, basically what we can see is we started to digitize, we take the digital photographs that I've taken already, start to incorporate the data from them into the repository. So let's just dig down real quick. And what you can see here is the type of data that we really want to see. So you'll start to notice all this Dublin core kind of descriptive information. What's important is we are able to kind of keep the original Spanish versions and descriptions of documents, but then dig down a little bit further and then start to provide these in English so that English speakers might be able to use them. And then also then we're starting to put all kinds of, individual details related to the manuscripts. And finally, what's most important is access to the original manuscript. So this is a good point to take a look at, which is as you can see, this is a register, and then only one of these records will pertain to our individual our individual metadata. So this is one individual record. So typically what can happen in these cathedral record books that are tracking economic transactions is that this document might be traced to maybe a Jewish individual that was shows up in the archive, but then typically, because of the nature of life this time, these other records here, probably one or two other ones will pertain in some way to this interreligious life. So you can see it's a pathway in to these materials. Next, what you can see is this is just a plain Google form that we generated, and our student intern basically can then start to record all the metadata. So providing a proper reference point for the Adobe Acrobat PDF. What is the descriptive title of the document? So we're writing this. So for example, a lease granted to Juan Sanchez Alvadan and the Muslim Quarter. And then it goes all the way through a complete set of metadata that we're collecting, which is then finally recorded in a metadata kind of spreadsheet behind the scenes. This is just another Google Doc. So this is nothing overly sophisticated. It's fairly simple, but that's the point. If you can kind of keep it relatively tight and not deciding that you need some specialized product to track your records and things like that, you'll just be fine. So this is something you can achieve with just a couple other folks to assist you with. And you can see how we start just generating all this data. Eventually, what you can see then is it drills down back into one of these records. And often we can find, this is where we start to find these issues of the Jewish renters of funds that are being collected from a port. So you can see, even though we're in the inland area of Burgos, the church, the cathedral, owned like certain types of rights all across Spain, in this case at a port. The last thing I would like to show you real quick is just right over here. Thank you for your patience. And that is that we are creating these transcriptions and starting to upload them. So this is a lease to a Muslim individual who is also a carpenter. But what we're also doing is now those transcriptions we've been generating through the MOOCs and through courses, we're starting to ingest those as well into the digital archive. So what you can see now is that not only can you search for the documents, they also have complete data. You can see the original document that is in an archive format, and then increasingly we're moving towards these transcriptions. And this one is a rough transcription, meaning it's not in any way a diplomatic version. And this is without abbreviations. And then we have another one where we've kind of spelled out those abbreviations. So in conclusion, while this is a rather minor project, it does suggest how independent scholars with limited budgets can initiate a long-term career commitment to the creation of scholarly curated collections that will be available for future generations. It offers one pathway for making the archives a bit less dark. Thank you for your time today, and good to meet you here at the conference.